So the most dangerous thing you can do when your life just totally falls apart is try to put it back together immediately.
Yeah, which goes against literally every instinct we have.
Right. I mean, it goes against every human reflex. When you lose your confidence or your motivation just entirely evaporates, the natural reaction is to panic.
Oh, absolutely. The nervous system completely freaks out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You experience a massive failure, or maybe the people you anchored your life to suddenly leave, and you just want to claw your way back to normal as fast as you can.
You want to fix the broken thing right that second.
Right. But the source material we are unpacking in this deep dive completely flips that paradigm. It suggests that this terrifying feeling of being at absolute zero, it's not the end of your story.
It is the exact opposite of the end.
Yeah, it's this raw, completely unpolished, but highly necessary beginning of a new version of yourself. So if you're listening to this and you feel like your dreams are out of reach, or you're just standing in the rubble of your own life, this is exactly for you.
It's such a profound shift in perspective. Because when we hit what feels like rock bottom, our physiological state is basically one of sustained trauma.
Like biologically speaking.
Right, biologically. The nervous system is flooded with cortisol, your brain's threat detection center is working overtime, and your cognitive bandwidth is totally consumed by the pain.
So you're basically running on fumes.
Exactly. And the reason immediate frantic action is so dangerous and why the text strongly advocates against it is that you cannot build a structurally sound future using the panicked, depleted architecture of the mind that just collapsed.
Wow, yeah. You can't rebuild with a broken brain.
You really can't. The thesis here is that the strongest individuals are not born with this innate immunity to suffering.
They're forged.
They are deliberately forged. They are manufactured through a highly specific sequence of processing pain, failure, and loneliness. And what we're looking at today is essentially an instruction manual for that forge.
And I love that it's a really meticulous manual. It's not, toxic positivity or some rapid life hacks.
No, not at all.
It's a slow, calm, methodical reconstruction. So let's take a deep breath and walk through these 7 steps. The entire process begins with this incredibly strict mandate. Part 1 is radical acceptance.
And it draws a very hard line in the sand with this one.
It really does. No excuses, no denial, and absolutely no blaming external factors. You have to look at your life, at the wreckage, with complete objectivity.
Which is brutally hard to do.
So hard. But if your habits are destructive, if your mindset is negative, if you have wasted years of your life, the text says you have to state that as a pure empirical fact.
The psychology behind why this is the mandatory first step is just fascinating.
How so?
Well, human beings have a very robust psychological immune system. So when we experience a profound failure, our ego immediately deploys defense mechanisms.
Like pointing fingers.
Exactly. The most common is externalizing the locus of control. We blame the economy, we blame our upbringing, maybe a toxic partner, or just bad luck.
And to be fair, sometimes those things are very real.
Oh, they are often very real and highly impactful. But neurologically speaking, the moment you assign the ultimate responsibility to an external force, you surrender your agency to change it.
You're just a victim of circumstance then.
Right. You enter a state of learned helplessness. So the text demands this brutal honesty not to punish you, but to forcefully drag your locus of control back inside your own mind.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because after asking you to list out all these failures, the wasted time, the ruined relationships, the source delivers a 3-word instruction that almost feels wrong.
The phrase, "that is okay."
Yes, that is okay. It says every successful person has a broken chapter. But wait, isn't it counterintuitive to accept that you've wasted time without feeling guilty?
Okay.
I mean, doesn't that just breed complacency?
It's a crucial distinction, and it really comes down to the difference between emotional acceptance and behavioral complacency.
Okay, explain that difference.
Well, complacency is static. It's looking at the wreckage and saying, this is who I am, and this is how it will always be. Radical acceptance is dynamic. It's saying, this is exactly where I am standing right now, and the reality of this is undeniable.
It's like taking inventory.
Exactly. Think of it through cognitive load. When you're in denial or consumed by shame over past mistakes, you're burning an immense amount of cognitive energy simply fighting reality.
Your brain is basically working overtime just to suppress the present.
Right. By saying, that is okay, you instantly release that cognitive tension. You stop fighting the existence of the problem, which frees up the mental ATP, the actual biological energy to solve it.
So you're neutralizing the emotional charge. It's like if you're renovating a house that just collapsed, You can't rebuild until you honestly assess the cracked foundation.
You can't pretend the foundation is fine.
Right. You don't sit in the rubble crying because the house fell. You look at it and say, okay, the joists rotted out. That is a fact. The guilt is entirely useless there. You just need the data to extract the lesson.
And the text gives a specific mechanism for this pivot. It says, stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me?
That is such a powerful shift.
It's the linchpin of the whole process. Why is this happening to me? Is victim language. It assumes the universe has a vendetta against you.
Right. Whereas, what is this teaching me is the language of an architect.
Exactly. You turn the catastrophe into a curriculum. And when you make that shift, you fundamentally alter how your brain encodes the memory of the trauma.
Instead of just pure pain, it becomes useful data.
Precisely. You force the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex to process the event as high-value experiential data, which perfectly sets up the closing thought for this phase. You are not your past mistakes, you are your future decisions.
Because you've fully extracted the data from the mistake. It served its evolutionary purpose, so you don't need to carry the emotional weight anymore.
It does carry the algorithm it produced.
I love that. So, moving to part 2. Once you reach this state of radical acceptance, the immediate temptation is to act. You want to rush out and fix everything loudly.
Oh, the comeback tour.
Yes, you want to post a cryptic quote on Instagram or text your ex and explain how much you're changing. But the source suggests the exact opposite. It calls for a strategic disappearance.
The directive is totally uncompromising. Disappear from the noise. Spend time alone. Turn off social media.
It essentially says to put your life in airplane mode.
What's fascinating here is the neurobiological necessity of this. The text says, not everybody needs access to your energy. And we live in an attention economy designed to keep us in perpetual low-grade reactivity.
Always responding to something.
Right. We are constantly evaluating social hierarchies and context switching. Every time you check a feed or try to manage someone else's perception of your comeback, you're leaking vital neurochemical resources.
And when you're starting from zero, you don't have any resources to spare.
Exactly. Your reserves are profoundly depleted. So plugging those leaks is a biological necessity.
But isn't disappearing just the kind of running away from your problems? I mean, socially, we're conditioned to think that if we aren't highly visible, we cease to exist.
It feels like running away, but it's really not. The world is incredibly loud, but actual growth only happens in quiet moments. It prescribes isolation as a laboratory setting.
A laboratory to answer the 4 critical questions it lists.
Right. Who do I want to become? What kind of life do I want? What habits are destroying me? And what habits can save me?
And you just can't answer those if your environment is polluted with other people's opinions.
You really can't. When we're socially connected, our brain uses the external attention network. But when you isolate, the brain activates the default mode network, or the DMN.
The DMN, what does that do?
It's the neural network responsible for self-reflection, autobiographical memory, and projecting yourself into the future.
Oh, wow. So it's basically the identity reconstruction engine.
That's exactly what it is. But the DMN is fragile. It shuts down the moment you engage with external tasks or social media.
So silence is literally the required condition to turn it on.
Exactly.
It goes perfectly with my airplane mode analogy. If your smartphone's operating system is corrupted, you don't keep making calls and downloading apps while trying to fix the code.
The system will just crash.
Right. You sever the connection to the external network. You're intentionally killing all the background apps, draining the battery, so the core processor can run a massive internal software update.
That analogy holds up perfectly. And when you finally turn airplane mode off, the source makes this deeply compelling claim. It says, a person who knows himself becomes dangerous in a good way.
Dangerous in a good way. I love that phrasing.
Because when you spend enough time in the DMN, answering those questions without external influence, you forge this terrifying level of internal alignment.
You become unshakable.
Exactly. You aren't susceptible to peer pressure. You don't crave cheap validation. You operate with a chilling level of clarity. You trade the need for attention for the weapon of discipline.
Okay, so that leads perfectly into part 3, building small daily habits.
Yeah.
Because knowing the habits that will save you and actually doing them are 2 totally different things.
Oh, completely different.
And the source bypasses these grand, sweeping life overhauls. It outlines really humble micro actions. Wake up earlier, read 10 pages, exercise for 20 minutes, drink more water.
Sleep on time.
Yeah, exactly. So what does this all mean? Reading 10 pages or drinking water seems way too small to fix a ruined life or a broken heart.
On the surface, it almost sounds insulting to someone whose life just collapsed. But if we examine the neurobiology of behavioral change, particularly after trauma, it is the only strategy that actually works.
Because if you try to change everything in one day, it usually fails, right?
Right. The text warns against relying on motivation. Motivation is a fleeting emotional state. The future is built by habits, which are neurobiological infrastructure.
It's the 1% improvement every day concept.
Precisely. When you're at zero, your allostatic load, the wear and tear on your biological stress response, is maxed out. Your amygdala, the fear center, is highly sensitized.
So if you say, I'm going to totally fix my career this week, the brain freaks out.
Exactly. The amygdala perceives that massive goal as a threat. Cortisol spikes, and you retreat into paralysis. But the amygdala does not perceive drinking a glass of water as a threat.
It slips right past the neurological radar. It's like the concept of the trim tab on a massive ship.
Oh, I like that. Explain the trim tab.
So if you have a huge ocean liner, the main rudder that turns it is incredibly heavy. You can't just shove it against the ocean current.
The resistance is way too great.
Right. But built into the edge of that giant rudder is a tiny secondary rudder called a trim tab. It takes almost zero effort to move the trim tab.
And that creates a low-pressure zone.
Exactly. It gently pulls the massive main rudder into position, which then turns the entire ship. So a 1-degree shift seems imperceptible today, but over a long voyage, it lands you on a completely different continent.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize self-efficacy. Every time you successfully execute a tiny trim tab action, you trigger a dopamine reward prediction error.
Wait, a what?
A dopamine reward prediction error. You made a promise to yourself, I will read 10 pages, and you fulfilled it. Your brain releases a small pulse of dopamine.
Not because it was monumental, but because you kept your word.
Exactly. And that dopamine acts as a neurological reinforcement, slowly rebuilding your internal locus of control.
You're gathering actual physical evidence that you can influence your own reality.
And the source points out a haunting symmetry here. It says, most people destroy themselves slowly. It's rarely a spectacular implosion.
It's hitting the snooze button, having one extra drink.
Right, a slow creep of bad habits becoming hardwired. But the beautiful duality is that rebuilding operates on the exact same timeline.
One habit, one day, one decision at a time, until you look back and realize you are completely different.
But as the source recognizes in Part 4, executing those tiny habits is fiercely contested territory.
Oh, absolutely. The moment you try to wake up early or sit down to read, an internal voice tells you to give up. Which brings us to learn to control your mind.
The text refers to the mind as a double-edged sword. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy.
And when you're starting from zero, it's pretty much exclusively acting as your enemy. It's just a highly efficient negativity generator.
Exactly. The text warns that negative thoughts destroy confidence, fear destroys action, and overthinking destroys peace.
It even lists the specific lies. You are not good enough, you are too late, and you will fail again. How do you just not believe your own brain?
Well, we have to look at the evolutionary biology of the inner critic. The human brain was not optimized for happiness or self-actualization.
Right, it was optimized for survival.
Right, so its primary function is to constantly stand for threats and keep you safely within the known. When you try to change your identity, your brain perceives that deviation as a mortal threat.
So it generates those thoughts as a defense mechanism to coerce you back into the familiar.
Even if the familiar is totally miserable, the profound insight here is the concept of cognitive diffusion. The text says, not every thought deserves your attention. Sometimes your mind lies to you.
Which challenges how we experience consciousness. We assume if a thought is in our head, in our voice, it must be true.
We fuse our identity with our thoughts. But the brain is an organ that produces thoughts just like the stomach produces acid.
You don't have to identify with every drop of acid. I always use the spam folder analogy for this.
Expand on how you apply that.
Well, your email gets incoming messages all day. Some are important, but a lot of it is auto-generated spam. You owe the IRS money. Click here to claim your prize.
Right, total junk.
If you treated every spam email as objective truth, your life would be a chaotic nightmare of panic. But you recognize the format. You see the subject line, you acknowledge it arrived, but you don't click the link.
You don't engage with the payload.
Exactly. You just let it auto-delete.
Yeah.
So the source is telling us that thoughts like, you're too late, are psychological spam. They're auto-generated by the amygdala.
You can't stop the spam from arriving, but you must refuse to click the link. That is a highly functional framework for cognitive diffusion.
And the source prescribes a mental training regime to support this. Reading positive books, listening to motivational lessons, avoiding negative people.
It's not about blind optimism, it's about neuroplasticity. Neurons that fire together wire together.
So if you constantly feed your brain cynical inputs, you physically strengthen the inner critic.
Exactly. By forcing positive inputs, you're rewiring the brain's physical structure to default to a more powerful state. The text's concluding mantra here is, peace is power.
Protect your mental energy at all costs.
Right.
But if we move to part 5, even if you master the spam folder and protect your peace internally, there's a huge external threat, other people's opinions.
Yes. Tackling stop seeking validation. The need for external approval is arguably the single greatest point of failure for people rebuilding.
The text is bluntly honest. It says trying to impress everybody is exhausting. Not everyone will understand your journey, some will laugh, and some only support you after you're successful.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at our evolutionary wiring again. For ancestral humans, validation from the tribe was a matter of physical survival.
If the tribe disapproved and exiled you, you died.
Right. So we are biologically programmed to interpret social disapproval as a threat to our existence. The social rejection circuitry shares the same neural pathways as physical pain.
So when your old friends laugh at your new habits, your brain registers it as literal physical pain. No wonder we naturally crave validation while rebuilding.
But seeking that validation when changing your identity is lethal. You're outsourcing your motivation to people who don't possess the blueprint of what you're building.
It's like asking a passing stranger to grade your half-finished painting. The canvas is messy, the underlayers of color are chaotic, and the stranger says, "This is garbage."
And from their perspective, they're right.
Exactly. But their opinion is irrelevant because they can't see the vision in your head. They can't see what the painting is going to become.
Yeah. And beyond that, there's the phenomenon of systemic homeostasis. When you change, you force the social system around you to react.
You hold up an uncomfortable mirror.
Yes. Unconsciously, your growth feels like a judgment on their stagnation. So their natural instinct is to pull you back to the baseline.
And which is why the text says, silence your ego. Focus on growth. Let your results speak later. True rebuilding is a silent, unglamorous process.
And it provides the antidote. It tells us, you must learn to clap for yourself. You must become your own motivation.
Which sounds a bit cliche, but there's hard science behind why that's a non-negotiable skill, right?
Absolutely. It's the biology of self-directed neuroplasticity. When we seek external validation, we're looking for someone else to trigger our dopamine release.
When they say good job, we get the hit.
Right. But if that external source is removed, the behavior collapses. Learning to clap for yourself means manually releasing dopamine into your own system.
By consciously acknowledging that you kept a promise to yourself.
Yes. You condition your brain to attach the reward to the effort itself, rather than the external recognition. You become a closed-loop system of motivation.
You shed the need for approval. So by working in silence, building daily habits, and ignoring the critics, you are shedding your old self. But you have to deliberately construct what takes its place.
Which brings us to part 6 and 7. Create a new identity and embrace loneliness and struggle.
The text outlines a formula for a new identity. It says, ask who the strongest version of you is, how they think, speak, and act, and then start becoming that person right now.
The foundational premise is stark. Your old identity created your old life. If you want a different life, you must become a different person.
It's essentially reverse engineering yourself. But here's where it gets really interesting. It asserts that confidence is built through action, not imagination.
You cannot meditate your way into a new identity. You have to physically embody the behaviors. The text says if you want discipline, act disciplined. If you want intelligence, study daily.
It aligns perfectly with method acting.
Well, in psychology, it's called self-perception theory. We used to believe internal beliefs dictated actions. But this theory posits that we develop our identities by observing our own behavior.
Oh, wow. So your brain watches your body repeatedly wake up early and study, and eventually concludes, I must be a disciplined person.
Exactly. The action precedes the belief. You are rebuilding yourself brick by brick, and the habits are the bricks.
Like method acting, you play the role of the strongest you every single day until it's no longer an act. But the text is also honest about the painful side effect of this growth. Loneliness.
It warns that friendships will end and people won't recognize the new you. When you change your shape, you no longer fit cleanly into the interlocking dynamics of your old life.
It's like apoptosis in biology.
What? Apoptosis?
Yeah, programmed cellular death. Cells are deliberately destroyed to make way for new, healthy growth. If a cell doesn't die when it's supposed to, you get disease. The same goes for social ecosystems.
That's a perfect analogy. The loss of those old relationships isn't a failure. It's a biological requirement of the rebuilding process.
But it involves immense suffering, which is why the source frames pain not as useless, but as preparation. It says, diamonds are created under pressure.
Hard times teach strength. It asks you to view pain as a deliberate forge burning away the obsolete parts of your old identity.
Every difficult season is deliberately building a wiser, calmer, stronger version of you.
But looking at this massive journey, the lost friends, the mental battles, the habits, it can feel entirely overwhelming.
Oh, definitely. The mountain seems impossibly high.
But the source provides one final, crucial perspective shift in its final message. It urges the reader not to panic, reminding us transformation happens daily. Start today.
And it zeroes in on the most profound realization of the entire text. You are not starting from nothing. You are starting from experience.
That line completely recontextualizes the feeling of being at zero. It breaks the illusion of the blank slate.
Right, because when we hit the bottom, we feel like a newborn with no skills, but that is an absolute lie. All the failures, the people who left, they are the raw experiential materials for the new build.
In cognitive science, there's a concept called transfer learning. If you train a neural network to recognize cars, it spends thousands of hours analyzing shapes.
Okay.
If you then train a new network to recognize trucks, you don't start from scratch. You take the core algorithms from the first network and apply them. The data changes, but the pattern recognition transfers over.
So the terrible experiences you survived are highly sophisticated algorithms.
Exactly. You know what the red flags of a toxic relationship look like now? Your pattern recognition is sharp.
This is so liberating. It's like the new Game Plus mode in a video game.
I'm not a big gamer. How does that work?
So when you beat a really difficult game, you unlock New Game Plus. You restart the campaign back at level 1, the map is unexplored, and the journey is just as long.
But you keep your stuff.
Yes. You retain all the upgraded armor, weapons, and skills you mastered during your first playthrough. You're starting over, but you're navigating it with the power of a veteran.
That analogy perfectly captures the paradigm shift. Your past failures are the upgraded armor you are bringing into this new iteration of your life.
It transforms despair into tactical advantage. You know where the traps are this time.
And this anchors the concluding promise of the text. Stay disciplined. Stay patient, stay focused. Your new life is waiting for you.
It's not the closing of the book. It's turning the page to this second act. So, just to synthesize, we've covered accepting the broken chapter without guilt, disappearing to find focus, and building 1% habits.
We talked about mastering the lying mind, clapping for yourself, acting as your future identity, and embracing the pressure that creates diamonds.
This deep dive wasn't just abstract philosophy. It's a literal blueprint starting today. Which small habit will you physically execute today?
The action must precede the belief. You cannot wait for the motivation to arrive.
Absolutely. So as we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. The text guarantees you are starting from experience, wielding the upgraded armor of your past. So consider this. If your past mistakes, heartbreaks, and broken chapters were actually a highly rigorous, flawlessly customized training program designed specifically for the person you are about to become.
What is the very first task your training has perfectly prepared you to tackle right now?
Exactly. Thank you for joining us in The Forge today. We wish you well on your rebuilding journey. See you on the next deep dive.